Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Catherine Foxhall, and I'll be chairing this meeting with my co-chair, Councillor Stefan Gavrishak. Over here in the red jumper, and I've got officers Suzanne Malcolm from the senior management team and Candida Basilio from Demographic Services supporting our committee this evening. So this meeting is being held in Abbey House, Abingdon. All voting members of this committee are here in person as required. We have officers both in the room and joining remotely. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us both online and in person. So this meeting is being streamed live and recorded on YouTube for the public to view. If those who are online, please keep your microphones muted while you're not speaking. That would be really helpful. Please do raise your virtual hand if you'd like to speak, and officers will be in support to help us notice when everybody online wants to speak. For those who are in the room, the evacuation procedure in the event of emergency is to evacuate the nearest exit, which is just at the corridor on our right, so closer than normal. Please assemble in the car park. If anyone needs a break, there's water in the foyer and a toilet as well. We can have a 5-minute break between our two major items this evening for breakfast conference. Please keep mobile phones silent or off, and committee members, unless your phones are where your meeting papers are, please do not use them during the meeting. At the end of the meeting, we will confirm that the live stream has ended, so please remember to sign out as you leave as well. Great. So for chair's announcements, I don't particularly have anything to announce this evening. We've got two main items on our agenda this evening, one of which will be held in public session and one of which we will be holding in a confidential session. So let's start with any apologies. Do we have any apologies? I don't believe so.
It's just one of our cabinet members available and talk with his own voice.
Okay, so Councillor Porter has apologies.
He has, yeah.
In terms of the committee, we have all members. Oh no, sorry, we haven't got Judy. Have we heard from Judy?
I haven't heard from her.
She may be on her way, so she may. Right, so let's go to minutes of the last meeting. The minutes of the last meeting do include some exempt minutes. So we have two options. We can either sign them off now if everybody's happy, or we can look at the exempt minutes later in our confidential session if there is anything anybody wishes to discuss. Please let me know if you're happy to sign off minutes of our last meeting. I have a proposer and a seconder. Proposer, thank you, Stefan. Thank you, Councillor Candy. Okay, great. Everybody happy to sign off? Lovely, thank you, everybody. I will sign that at the end. So, declaration of interest. We will do a declaration of interest at the start of each item as we get to it. Unless there's anybody who wants to raise anything general now in terms of their interest. Okay. Urgent business. I don't have any urgent business to share with you guys this evening. Public participation. Candida, have we got any?
No one's registered today.
No members of the public. Welcome, Judy. We're in quite a little room this evening.
Check the chair before you sit down.
There is one.
There's a comedy chair somewhere around.
Yeah, have you? Have you got one? Yeah.
Oh, you've got it.
Yes, over here.
Judy got them, I think.
Who wouldn't see that? This is eyes.
No, I can't see it.
Yeah, I'll just go next to Ed. Just go this way.
Yeah. I'm a bit too short to do that.
Yeah, no, I'm trouble.
We have Councillor Rob. So we do have a full committee this evening. Thank you, Judy. So we move to the next item on our agenda, which is our work schedule. Are there any comments anybody would want to make about work schedule, which I'm trying to bring up So in terms of the work schedule, so email your apologies. Yeah, the time that we helpful, then we can keep track of. So in terms of our work schedule, we have review future Oxfordshire partnership and land acquisition items this evening. And then in January, we have leisure procurement strategy, and we have a new item added to our work schedule to review the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny report and to look at next steps. And so I think, as has been reported in our separate scrutiny committees to Vale and South, our new head of legal, Nick Bennett, is now in post. Welcome, Nick. And we've put in place a plan for a task and finish group to look at the report from the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny, which came to us earlier in the year. So thank you very much, Nick, for your work on that so far, and we'll look forward to taking that on.
Can I say welcome to Nick?
Houston.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
For this committee as well, I've already welcomed you to Wales, so you're very welcome from joining the scrutiny committee as well, and I'm sure we're all really looking forward to working with you. So thank you very much. Is there any comment? And then items for future meetings, we've got a joint air quality action plan, integrated care board remains a standing item at the moment. I would really say that pending and we also have Thames Water and the Environment Agency as a upcoming item as well. But I would say that depending on what the task and finish groups decide, this work programme may well change fairly significantly over the next few months. So do please give us your input. And as the members of the task and finish group, it's going to be the chairs, the co-chairs of this committee, as well as 2 members from each of the South and Vale committees. And we will be asking for everybody's input and thoughts. So please do let us know. All right. Thank you ever so much. Does anyone else have any comments now on the work programme that they'd like to make? Okay, let's move on then to our first item, major item for discussion this evening, which is the Future Oxfordshire Partnership Review. We have had the paper on this, so thank you very much for everybody who's worked on this. And
I don't know if I have an interest or conflict of interest, because I am on the Future Oxfordshire Partnership Scrutiny Board.
Okay.
And one of the elements for discussion involves dissolving the Scrutiny Board.
Okay.
So I may be perceived as having a conflict of interest.
If that's the case, I'm also on that.
Oh, wow, well done.
I'd be disappointed not to be able to participate.
So would I.
well, I think you'll certainly be able to bring your expertise and understanding of the situation to this meeting. So I think it's probably a great asset to have the three of you. So just for the record, that's Councillor Andy Cook, Councillor Joe Robin, Councillor Lee Mullins, all members of the current scrutiny committee. Nick.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Just to give reassurance, what you're doing today is talking in the broader sense about our approach towards that body. You're not making a funding choice. You're not making a binding recommendation on the activities of how we're going to engage with it. And so I'm absolutely content, just for the record again, and I know Candida will be recording this carefully, that the members in question have at the strongest a personal interest at the moment at this time. They can offer their views and opinions. Yes, of course, this has already been covered by one, and they'll need to restrict themselves from, putting themselves in a difficult position as far as prejudicing themselves here or somewhere else, predetermining themselves, but they can bring their insight and opinions and experience to bear. What they should avoid is expressing strong views that would tie their hands here or elsewhere. Chair, I hope that's helpful. It's meant to be, but I'm personally content as your monitoring officer that those members, having made the declarations they've already made, should be able to participate today, but just with half an eye to making sure they don't predetermine any element of future activity, I suppose. Is that clear and well understood by all concerned?
I would slightly challenge that. Both of these are scrutiny processes. I can't see how participating in the scrutiny process would in any way inhibit the ability to go on and undertake scrutiny somewhere else. I don't see that makes sense to me.
Well, I'd have to say, sorry, Chair, through you, I'd have to say there is sense in that you're scrutinising in one doesn't necessarily prevent you scrutinising in another, but you do bring different thought processes and different responsibilities to bear when you're involved in the same process at two different points. The key point here really is that I'm trying to make sure that you are keeping in mind that you are doing a different role here as somewhere else, which I know you well know, Councillor, and you can proceed today. However, there are restrictions if you were to take, we'll say, an extreme stance on something, so such as saying, well, under no circumstances would I ever allow this or that or the other. I think your insight is useful and important, but you need to be just a little bit cautious. That's all I'm saying.
I'll get the code.
Councillor Cook, no,
Might be too
cautious.
concerned.
Okay.
I was just going to say that, yeah, Councillor Cook and Lee, you're known for your reticent views.
I would like to, at this point, welcome the two cabinet members responsible for this item. We have in the room with us Councillor Becky Thomas, who's leader of VOWH District Council, and Councillor David Ruane is online, leader of South Oxfordshire District Council. Would you like to introduce this item?
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I'm introducing this paper tonight. In June, both cabinets considered a paper on the future of VOWH, Future Oxfordshire Partnership, just for reference, and resolved to consider the future remit of the Future Oxfordshire Partnership a statutory joint committee, and to seek engagement from all councillors on that remit in order to assist the leader in representing the council's views. Following this, the government has announced an English devolution bill and has indicated their intention for this to lead to universal coverage of mayoral combined authorities at sub-regional level. A framework for this devolution is expected to be published in the next few weeks. On the 30th of December 2024, OCC submitted a response to the government following its request to upper tier authorities for expressions of interest on devolution. This was countersigned by all Oxfordshire's district leaders. It is unknown what the devolution framework will mean for us. It is likely that a formal view will be required by both councils here in due course to inform any Oxfordshire-wide or national discussions via the reset of VOWH or any other channel. The paper that is being considered later this month is to seek the endorsement of the leaders to a reshaping of VOWH and to request officers develop the plans in more detail along with a revised terms of reference. This next step is critical as it determines the detail of future operations, and I am keen to make sure they are fit for purpose and ensure our own democratic processes are intact and respected. To confirm, any revised terms of reference would require approval by each council. The main changes proposed in the paper are a change of the partnership's name to the Oxfordshire Leaders Board, the removal of advisory groups, and the disbanding of the Scrutiny panel. I've already had questions from members about these changes, and I suspect we need to put further flesh on some of these details contained within the report to ensure that its meaning is clear. I would also like to see a tightened focus on the items coming before the reset VOWH, with a reduced programme from what is suggested here to maximise efficiency, reduce duplication, and ensure that the partnership's remit does not override the sovereignty of its component councils. Another aspect of the report that has concerned some is the financial implications of the changes suggested here. Reducing the resources we have assigned to various VOWH functions was one of our main motivators to undertake a refresh of VOWH. The idea that the changes being suggested would not come with a reduction in the resources required to manage the partnership is difficult to comprehend, and I feel I may need to push back on that as it goes forward. I would welcome your views on that. Subject to the creation of the terms of reference, in which we can feel confident, and perhaps a further discussion about the financial implications of the suggestions laid out here. I'm generally content to see this paper go forward, noting that it is considered to be an interim position until devolution plans become more clear. I am therefore bringing this report to joint scrutiny to seek the committee's views, and that you can feedback on behalf of our councils at the public meeting on the 26th of November, when this refresh paper will be considered. Thank you. That's Sandra.
Thank you, Becky, for that introduction, and particularly for your explanation of some of your concerns. That's really helpful. Councillor Wayne David, would you like to add anything to that? You're very welcome.
Just thank you to Bethia for comprehensive introduction. I'd just like to add that whilst it's endlessly fascinating to speculate what the local government reorganisation might bring us, for the time being, we have the structure we have, and we need a mechanism to talk Oxfordshire-wide around issues that affect us all. And so what is coming forward is a proposal for, I hope, a light touch, or much lighter touch than it has been in the past, FOP. But I think we need something that keeps us going until we know what the new structure is likely to be. And so I would like us to focus on what that should be, because even if the government does announce a new structure, it could take 2 years to implement. So we need something that works for that period of time. Thank you.
David, that's very helpful. Right, so our job this evening then is to really help the leaders in representing our councils to a wider Oxfordshire group. So we have a chance to ask the leaders questions, then we have a discussion, and then we can come up with any recommendations that we would like leaders particularly to take forward. Andy, you were straight in.
Finish speaking.
Yeah, sorry. I think Nick better get ready with the crook.
Sorry, before you start, I should really mention that it's really important that we don't get too far, and we're probably going to want to talk about the financial details, but we must get to the point.
I'm going to avoid finances completely.
Okay. Yeah, individual job roles, we do have to be really careful to avoid.
Yeah, but just in case I do get overly bolshy, please stand by with that crook like that old going to yank me off the stage.
The bench.
David actually did mention a possible, at least partial answer to my first question, which is why. The point of the Future Oxfordshire Partnership grew out of the Oxfordshire Growth Board, which was to look after the Oxfordshire Housing and Growth Deal. It says we can draw a line over that, that's dead. So reading through everything that it mentions, it does smack somewhat of an answer that's searching for a question. So inclusivity and equality, building a stronger, more productive and inclusive economy, enhancing the natural environment, place shaping collaboration at the strategic level. Why do we need a new mutated FOP, even an evolved FOP? Is the first one, and I want to get a second one in as well.
Can we start with that one?
Yeah, well, the second one might be a bit more sensitive. Where's the scrutiny? Because you're dissolving scrutiny.
All right, let's come back to scrutiny a bit. Let's start with the first question then of why.
So in terms of the focus and why, this has been something that we have been really pushing back on throughout, both us as leaders.
Very aware, because South and Vale have both been concerned. So
yeah, we want to reduce, streamline, efficient FOP. And I would suggest that the huge list that is in that report of topics that can be considered is far too broad. My bugbear in particular is AI. I don't think that is necessary to be discussed at a FOP level or any level, I suggest. So yeah, I think the focus needs to be tightened significantly.
Agreed, yeah.
I think the range of topics discussed include those items that are not really important to a joint partnership.
Feels like people throwing in things to see what sticks.
Yeah, and this is what we've continually found.
Exactly.
Yeah, with FOP, it's always about, okay, we've got these structures, how can we give them a purpose?
It's a fundamental rule of organisations that they try to grow up to give themselves purpose and expand out. So the question should be, what is the mission?
Yeah, exactly. So I think, as well as this broad thing that I don't think needs to be discussed at this level, there are also items that are already being covered by various different organisations and partnerships.
Yeah.
So there's a lot about like inclusivity and the economy, and that obviously is already covered by the Oxfordshire Inclusive Economic Partnership.
Yeah.
A lot of the nature recovery work is the
Because
Oxfordshire.
the fundamental question is, what would happen if FOP didn't exist? Would we still cover it?
Exactly. So, and I think the majority of that stuff we would cover.
Because I think as well, we need to know.
Sorry, Andy, but I'm going to bring in David Ryan at this point. It's a lovely conversation to listen to, but
Sorry,
so,
we're monopolising.
I think it's quite true to say that a lot of these things would happen anyway, because officers would do them. The question is, do you want democratic oversight on them? So, for example, the local area energy plan. I attended the UK 100 conference about a month ago. Some places are doing local area energy plans. They were quite happy that we were doing one, but the money for that was voted through FOP, and the reporting back is through FOP. So that, yeah, we're not doing the technical work on it, but we're taking periodic reports to check back to make sure it's doing the right thing. Similarly with the pathway to zero carbon Oxfordshire, our environment officers meet up quite regularly to go through a work plan, but it was FOP that agreed the methodology, FOP that agreed a budget for it, and we're taking the annual report at our next meeting to say, yes, this is the pathway that we still want to follow. So yes, quite a lot of things will happen without FOP, but they won't have a mechanism for a democratic oversight.
Scrutiny there.
Sorry. We'll come back to scrutiny in a bit. Let's
Okay.
with this kind of purpose discussion, I think, because I think there's other people who've got questions about that specifically. Becky, did you want to?
Well, I was just going to say, I think, well, I think I mentioned in my introduction that one of the I think top on the list of topics to be discussed by FOP is devolution, and I think that is a critical one, because having a structure already set up with all of the council leaders there, it seems a sensible structure to discuss devolution if it's going to go ahead and how we would see that happen. Now, that's not to say, obviously, that FOP decides what devolution does. It would be, again, the sovereignty of our councils that determines that. So, but determines how we would like to see it. But
One
yes,
thing I was wanting to say was very much directly accounted to that is there is a danger of begging the question. If an organisation,
I've got four
Sorry.
people up with their hands.
I just want to say that if there is already an organisation set up that looks almost like a shadow combined authority, it is very easy for the government to say, well, you've got one, go with that. In which case, all of our arguments go out the window. FOP becomes combined authority.
so just come back on that quickly. Yeah. We don't have any, I think David said, we don't have any real idea about devolution right now because we don't have the white paper. There have been some suggestions. The suggestions would indicate that devolution, or it probably wouldn't be a combined authority on a county scale. So that is something that is probably out of question anyway. So I think we give up that.
Nick, did you want to come in on this point?
Yeah, I think members need to be quite cautious about double guessing what might be happening on devolution. I think it's very much at the moment at a framing stage at a government level, and any discussion that starts looking at what it might look like is going to lead you down a dead alleyway that is not going to be helpful to your debate around FOP. I mean, being aware of it, of course, you have to be aware of it, but please, can you try your best to avoid getting into the weeds of what various models that you might have in your head, or you might have chatted about, whatever. It's really important you try and keep away from that, please, and focus on the wider stuff which you've been doing to this point. I'd encourage that quite strongly.
Thank you, Nick. David, did you want to comment quickly on that? And I've got more questions about the purpose.
Yeah, I just wanted to answer Andy's correct question directly. The government's made it quite clear that Oxfordshire is too small to be a combined authority. So it's not a danger that FOP will become a combined authority.
We are in session. I've got Lee, and then Peter, and then Joe.
For me, devolution is a process in which you pass power away from the central area towards more local areas. And that's at the root of that whole concept. There's reference here to the motions that South of Vale made in 2019. Previously, there'd been a proposal for One Oxfordshire to bring all power into the centre.
Sorry, Lee, do you have a question related?
Yes, and OGB was, I think, the start of that model. And the councils, when they put forward that thought, were more interested in bringing unitary powers more locally. But I particularly want to pick up on what this board, what this meeting is actually for. The very inclusion of the word board tells you what is the intent behind this. It's a powerful decision-making body. It's not something which any of us, I think, had wanted. And when we look at the paper that we have behind this particular report, it's talking about, we endorse the proposed powers. It doesn't say increased powers, but that's what it means. Purposes, priorities and steps set out. And they continue to suggest that decisions on housing should sit here, and that they might be a matter of joint working, which seems to go against the whole idea that actually the planning powers would remain with the district.
I put you to a question.
Okay, so my real question is about the major aim of this thing. I would have suggested that the leaders thing might be called something more like a discussion forum rather than a decision-making board. My question is, what's the intent and what's the power that is intended to sit behind this change?
So it's interesting, actually, because I had a discussion with another member earlier today about this, and a member of the opposition party as well. So basically, I think there's been a lot of confusion about what FOP is. It used to be a board, and then it was a partnership, and now it's a board. But it can be called anything, and it can be called Fred, I was told, and it still has the same powers because it has always been that structure, and it will always be.
Sorry, terms and reference.
Yeah, let me get on to that. It has
not.
Yeah, it has always been a decision-making body. Yes, it has. It has always been a decision-making body. I can refer to officers. It's just that we have been very careful not to take too many decisions through it. And the terms of reference, I can't say that, apologies, of reference that are so crucial, as I indicated. That is what we really need to get right And that is where we need to make sure that our councils have a very strong voice on what we want to see go through FOB, or whatever you want to call it. Fred.
Can I just follow that up? In the associated paper, paragraph 7, one of the collective working aims is to work collectively on thematic priorities to address the strategic challenges and maximise opportunities for investment and funding in Oxfordshire. It's not talking about the appropriate level, the right level. It's saying maximise, get every piece of investment and population growth and everything into Oxfordshire that we possibly can, which seems against me to link back to the levelling down agenda of the OGB arrangement.
Can I just go back to that again and just say, I am very glad that you were so concerned about this, because your voice is the voice that we need to hear to get those terms of reference, that we want to make sure that this partnership is well defined, okay, and the decisions that go to it are well defined.
So Lee, if you can think about your recommendation wording that we can bring back into the section later, that would be super helpful. Thank you.
And just before that was a collective options for voice, one voice, main voice.
Hi, so I really like this paper and I really like some of the things in it, but I do think it needs a bit more focus. So I suggest that, you know, the panel or whatever it's called is Fred, focuses on thinking about devolution in respect of Oxfordshire. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The local area energy plan, that makes a lot of sense. They're hard, complex, and it would be good to have some experts looking at that. And the net zero, that's what they did before, isn't it? So it makes sense for them to continue with that. But the other stuff, I think maybe we could cut down and get rid of some of the other stuff. So the economic partnership, I don't know what's happening with Oxlet, and that seems to be a bit confusing. And aren't there other people that we could looking after the economy and inclusivity and placemaking and infrastructure? Those feel like they don't need POP, but if POP could focus on those three things I listed, that would be good.
Okay, thank you. That's I guess the question then for our leaders would be, what do you think should be the priorities? Do you agree that that's the kind of?
Well, I do agree, as I said before, that it needs to be more focused. I think there is a great deal of stock put into some of these, and I say sub-partnerships just for understanding, like the Oxford Inclusive Economic Partnership and OLNP and those things, as well as those ones you mentioned there.
And sorry, I was confused actually, but those are also partnerships. Are they managed by FOB?
Yeah, I believe they are. So basically, what I would like to see is both the focus of the subjects reduced dramatically to the bare bones, and also the membership, but I'm not talking about staffing, but the membership of FOB also stripped down. Because as far as I'm concerned, and I've always had this line, David might want to, it should be about democratically elected people around the table discussing the future of Oxfordshire. That's my opinion.
David, would you like to come back on that point specifically?
Yeah, one thing specifically, local nature partnership and inclusive economic partnership are both independent bodies, but they make reports to FOP to touch base with the democratic voice too. So the local nature partnership has a board which is made up of some spectacularly experts in their field, and I'm always embarrassed to be sitting at the table with them because I'm the FOP representative on that board. But what they then do is make periodic reports back to FOP to check that they're going in the right direction that matches with what the democratic leadership of Oxfordshire want. But they're not FOP bodies as such. One thing that's in the list there that I would like to point out that we are well aware of and keeping an eye of. We made a decision as FOP not to go forward with Oxplan 2050 and to go away and do our own plans. And so we must be wary that nothing that FOP does interferes with our ability to go away and do our own plans, because that was a decision of FOP. We all sat around the table and said, no, we're not agreeing here. Therefore, let's go away. Let's not try and shoehorn everything into an Oxplan 2050. Let's go away and do our own plans. And so we do need to be aware that we shouldn't be doing anything, and we need the terms of reference to be drawn well enough to stop us doing anything that would interfere with that process.
Thank you, David. I've got Joe, then Stefan, then.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, David. So on that point about, the democratic decision to not pursue the Oxplan 2050, why then is housing listed as one of the potential strategic aims of a new souped-up FOB? Particularly given the expressed concerns of a number of democratically elected members about the mission creep of the FOB. We don't have devolution yet. We are still local authorities responsible for housing. And we, engaging with our partners across, in other authorities as part of our duty to cooperate. So why then is housing in that? Would you be happy to see that removed? Because it's a concern for me, I have to say.
If I may, Chair, I think that if we include housing of any kind in the document, then the terms of reference have to be very tightly drawn about what is it specifically that we want FOP to do and what would specifically be the value that FOP could add. It wouldn't be as an overarching planning authority. Other councils have ideas of things where we could work together in terms of better affordability or working with registered providers or whatever, but not in terms of planning. And we need the terms of reference to be tightly drawn so that the word housing can mean many different things, and we need to make sure that it's not treading on the toes of things that we're doing individually.
Thank you, Dave. On that point, I would suggest then perhaps, as you say, that housing be very, very tightly drafted or else removed, because, and I mean, I'm sure that with agreement, these things can be added in at a later date when devolution takes place. But at the moment, we remain the local housing authority. That's for the districts in the city to determine housing need based on evidence and based on cooperation with our neighbours. So I'm uncomfortable with the inclusion of housing, full stop, given that we remain the local housing authority with responsible for housing delivery. But I wanted to say something positive about the FOB, and that is the Oxfordshire Strategic Vision, which was driven forward by the FOB, is actually quite an inspiring, exciting strategic vision that our councils had a great deal of input into. It had a great deal of democratic input, excellent consultation process. So that is a strategic vision that has been agreed by all the councils in Oxfordshire, a shared vision that was in some respects very difficult to get across the line, but it's an ambitious vision. And I think that that vision and the outcomes that are enshrined in that vision should very much be underpinning the FOB as it moves forward. And when Peter mentioned, or rather Lee mentioned, concern about, we have a government that's very committed to growth, and we have districts and a city that have already committed to a huge amount of growth. And what we really do need to be doing is bedding that growth in, ensuring that we have the infrastructure to support it. I mean, the strategic vision, I think, is a set of principles that could underpin everything that the FOB does. And I think it's that I would like to see very much front and centre. And I wonder if we really do need to redraw or reinvent the wheel, because the strategic vision has already been invented.
I was just going to, thank you. I was just going to go back something you said previously. As far as I'm concerned, it is not stripped up, it's stripped down.
Yeah.
And that is the important thing. And I think hopefully what you can hear from both of us is that while generally okay with where we are with this paper, there are issues, and that's why we championed the idea that these papers do come to individuals council scrutinies, because it's really important to have that scrutiny. sorry, not very good for my web. But I think that is super important, and we do have issues, but what we are really keen on is for you to have eagle eyes on the terms of reference as we develop them, should this go through.
And finally, it is democratic. That's the good thing about the FOB. It is democratic. It is not like some of these other quangos, which, you know, have a huge number of non-elected representatives. So I would say that about the FOB. And
Although, I mean, I would
coming here to us
Yeah,
tonight is
yeah.
positive.
I would like to see that it's more democratic and it's less about those unelected officials that are on it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you both. Step back.
Thank you. Can I ask a question before I get to the real question?
Was that the question?
Which is this.
Don't touch.
Yes, okay. We are scrutinising a draft sketch. And we're going to lob in lots of things to it. You go back to the FOB with all these ideas. Do we then scrutinise the final version?
I might have to defer to officers, but it's,
Because it seems to me we are going to lob at you lots of things that you as leaders go to FOB and say, right, well, South Oxfordshire and the Vale want this. And if you don't achieve that, you need to bring it back to us to say either well done for achieving it or no, not good enough. And then I'll ask my real questions.
oh gosh. I am happy to defer to Suzanne on this because I think you have a better understanding of where it goes from this point onwards.
What will happen at the meeting on the 26th is ultimately subject to agreement on the direction of travel. It will come back to officers to rework into a new terms of reference. That terms of reference is something that we need to go through each full council. So we would definitely be bringing that back to scrutiny at the appropriate time to say, this is what is proposed in the terms of reference, and that will flow from what's in this paper. So you'll be able to see what has been accepted or what changes have been made.
So the final document will come to South Cabinet, Royal Cabinet, and hence joint scrutiny. Okay, that's fine. That was the clarification. It seems to me then the job of this committee is to sort of we've already started lobbing the ideas that we want out of this into it. I am going to raise cost. I mean, if the scrutiny committee, if the FOB is having no work groups or no scrutiny panels, etc., then why should we pay X amount into the pot? So that will be a key focus for me. It does seem to me to be beneficial to have a board, whatever it's going to be called, and I think Peter actually said it very well, to discuss devolution, blah, 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 blah. But we've got to be extremely careful, and this was what Andy was wondering, we've got to be extremely careful that it doesn't become a board that mirrors a unitary going forward. So therefore we just have to be careful. So my questions are, if there are no advisory and standing groups, the cost needs to come down.
I see Nick, you've got your hand up. Did you want to comment before? Thank you, David.
May I? I'm sorry, I don't want to get my crook out.
That's all right,
look,
not me.
oh yes, I stand corrected. Just to remind everyone that that you can talk in general principles in the way that you are about funds and about monies here. If you are drilling down further, where we're starting to talk about specific things that could affect individuals, and we got someone on the call here who is I understand partially funded through these councils and others. So if it drifts too tight into the detail of that, you will need to stop the meeting and go into private session under part 2. So it's just a gentle reminder. I'm sorry to keep interrupting.
Yeah, no, that's fine, Nick. Thank you.
No, the point is, we are high level. We are saying that the board is doing less. Therefore, they're doing less work. I'm not going to drill down any further than that to actually say, well, this job should go or whatever. So forget that. All I'm saying is, if there's less work, therefore the contribution from South and Vale should be less, because we've got other things to do in Vale and South.
Yeah,
The
okay, I think,
50 grand, the other one.
So, Becky and David, would you like to come back on the general kind of finances?
I'm very happy to, thank you, Chair. And apologies, I didn't really understand your first pre-question, but that I think covered, I think I did cover that in my introduction. I just didn't understand your wording, and I apologise for that.
No.
And as I covered in my introduction, I do think that this is something we ought to be thinking about. And you've said it, I don't need to repeat it really. I think if there is a reduction on the what appears to be the amount that's being done, because the AGs, as I call them, are disappearing, and the scrutiny panel is not sitting, then I would say that the requisite resources should then be reflected in the financial commitment of each council. So yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. David, did you have any additions? No, okay. Let me move on to Alexandra.
Will this new group repair our bridges with Oxford City? Will the Oxford City leadership be more efficient and more productive?
So, to clarify, is that sort of, are you suggesting the
will the duty to cooperate and things like that
in terms of
happen? Because I think the previous one.
Okay, I'm being advised we probably shouldn't get into discussion because I think we're currently under maintenance services.
Sorry. I had one question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm going to come to Joe and then Rob.
Sorry, Ron. Thank you. Super quick. Given the recommendation to disband the FOP scrutiny panel, but recognising that this thread is going to be comprised of democratically elected leaders of councils, how do you see the checks and balances and maintaining that sort of democratic accountability in the absence of a scrutiny panel?
We have a Fred watch.
Yeah,
Fred watch.
Who's on Fred?
Where's the scrutiny?
I can, if you want me to. So basically, I think we had, again, a very good discussion today. It happened to be the Vale Group Leaders meeting, so I had an open discussion with Sarah James as well about this, and we were discussing the scrutiny function. And yes, if we dissolve the scrutiny panel, people would say, and I think it may not have been teased out so well in the paper. So I think perhaps that we do need to expand on this, and that basically by stripping out the scrutiny function of FOP, we are allowing the natural course of what we see as proper democratic process, i.e. every decision that is made by FOP or Fred or whatever you want to call it will come through our democratic processes. So it will come through scrutiny, it will come through JAG, and that is how each decision will be scrutinised. And that is one of the reasons why we have to be very clear about, in terms of reference, what things we would want to see FOP decide upon. Because obviously we don't want to have endless decisions having to go through FOP. And I think it's actually improving the scrutiny function, because it will be coming through ours rather than a scrutiny panel that is very dimorphous.
Okay. So it will, so in fact, there'll be more scrutiny because you've got all the scrutiny panels of all the different district councils. All have a role. Okay, lovely, thank you. Alexandra, did you have a comment specifically on that?
Yeah, on that. What happened when all the partnership of that FOB disagree in their scrutiny?
That's a good
Because
question.
that was an issue, I think, with, is it Oxford 2050, that if you don't have agreement between all the partners, then nothing happens.
Well, I mean, I think that to a certain extent that, well, I think perhaps,
Sorry.
I don't, unless Nick wants to jump in, Suzanne might have a better idea of the sort of legal legal structure than.
I'm looking at Nick.
There you go.
Sorry.
No, the way in which scrutiny works is different in different contexts. Okay, so today you're about establishing two corporate views on how you want to feed in to other people making decisions. Okay, and that's not standard, but it is part of your role as a scrutiny function. There is always going to be a tension between scrutiny and other decision-making elements of the council. That's not a problem. You can disagree with each other. What has to happen, though, is that you have your right to a voice, you express your voice, that you all parties are using the evidence, and that when the whoever it is that's making the decisions is informed by what your input has been. That doesn't change, and sometimes there will be difference between scrutiny function and executive function, by which I mean the cabinet usually, and that's absolutely fine. But and that will happen on something as contentious as establishing exactly the right level for democratic oversight of major projects such as the ones you've been talking about. I'm not sure I've completely got the question, but that's all I'd say is it's allowed that you disagree, and in fact it's part of the natural tension between different parts of the organisation which have got slightly different oversight functions.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point that this scrutiny panel is, and the individual ones of the council, of the two councils, far more powerful than FOP scrutiny. I mean, I get dragged in front of this committee several times a year and forced to answer questions. I've never been dragged in front of FOP scrutiny. And we get a report. Yeah, we get reports prior to FOP meetings, but it is not as intense a process as the individual scrutinies and the joint scrutiny committee here.
And bearing in mind, FOP scrutiny is merely advisory.
Yeah, you can't even do the invited analysis thing.
Well, we're stronger than I would say.
Okay.
Thanks. Going back to paragraph 7, which is the 3 purposes, I quite like the first 2, to be a forum for local authorities collectively to deliver the Oxfordshire strategic, and to be the collective Oxfordshire voice for engaging with government on devolution. I don't think I see the point, the 3rd point here, which looks a bit vague, and I think should be covered by us working collectively on the Oxford strategic vision. So do we need that 3rd point, which, when I read through it, looks a bit vague anyway?
But it's running.
It can mean whatever you want it to mean.
Yeah.
Yes.
If I can, yeah, thank you. As a general answer, I found some of this paper a bit more so broader than it should be. It may not be as well defined as it should be, and I think again we need to go back and define what we want, and whether that be through the terms of reference, which again, as we've said, will come back through full council. I think that's probably the and through scrutiny and Jack again, I think that's probably the sort of the more general answer. I think looking at that paper, it is probably too broad. I know it's been taken down. There's been many iterations, many drafts of it, but I think obviously, as I've said, yeah, it needs to be tightened.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take Chair's privilege and follow on from that, if I may, which is really that I think this is now, as far as I understand, the third reiteration of VOWH that we're discussing. It seems to me we're taking up a huge amount of time among members and officers involved to every few years rediscuss what this route is about. And I wonder is this paper that we've got and these proposals, are they kind of fit for purpose in creating a forum that doesn't need to be constantly rethought? And I think if it isn't, can we make it that? Do you see what I mean? Because it's a lot to keep coming back. Yes. What we actually need is a way of which definitely at the same time as we don't want to bolt it out and say we can do anything.
Yeah. No, I would definitely agree with the latter. Even if it doesn't, we don't want to. Sorry, I can't remember your wording exactly, but yeah. As it's framed, this VOWH refresh started quite some time ago. I think it's been delayed and did it with various sorts of distractions, perhaps earlier on in the process, way before it's got to this stage. There had been a previous workshop which I saw as more of a padding of VOWH and what can VOWH achieve. Now we've got to this stage, we're paring it back, and that's a good thing. Given that this process started a long time and it was the intention of councils to pare it back, I think that, sorry, I think that, I've just lost my train of thought with various things, but basically, I think that in the time that it's taken to get to this point, we've had new government, Devo, and those propositions, that has superseded the VOWH refresh. I've got that off my train back. And because of that, whatever goes forward with VOWH is only really an interim. It has sort of the idea of Devo has overtaken it. Like it or not, whatever is coming, and we can't speculate what's coming, VOWH probably won't exist in a format like this under whatever local government reorganisation, Devo deal, whatever that's coming.
I realise Judy has been waiting very patiently for a very long time. Apologise for jumping in front of you.
Oh, I'm making my turn. Okay. Yes, I mean, picking up some of the points that went through, the iterations were, the very first one was very clearly economic growth, and it was before the growth deal. And it was a board put together with some elected people, but an awful lot of non-elected people on it. And then the growth deal was put in place, and clearly there needed to be an accountable body because the money was substantial. So that's where it became official, if you like. And now the growth deal is finished, sort of nearly dragged on a bit. It's been a where do we go from here? And I think some of the lists and the third point, which was work collectively on thematic priorities, don't like that. But the thematic priorities that I've come up with are things like the local area energy partnership, because we were all kind of shocked when we suddenly got a solar farm application of the level of Botley West coming in our direction, because we had no legislative, no advice document in which to say, oh, you've got to adhere to this. It was literally the developers came in, we're in charge, we're just ready. So I think having those kind of advice documents, and the county council has several advice documents, things like new development parking proposals. They are advice documents, but if they're written into each of the local plans, then they become something that the whole of Oxfordshire has in its defence, if it wishes to take it as a defence. So I think that's the role I see going forward. And I would say we've not talked about flooding, but with the current climate approach, especially tonight, flooding is an area where water can land in one place and end up in another and cause major problems in both. So something in that area, I think we are fairly well underprotected in. Zero carbon, I think we've got ahead of the game in that one. Infrastructure, now we had money going to infrastructure, that stopped, we don't now. So we need to have some kind of document, which means that the county has some kind of basis on which schemes to promote, which schemes to put extra money into. And that's exactly what the Oxis document is for, to say, right, and it took the economic version first time round. Yeah. So those are the things that I think support number 7. So have I got a question? Yes, I do. I think the terms of reference are utterly critical. Taking affordable housing out completely, the affordable housing was something that was immensely difficult to achieve, and a lot of the bodies that we ended up working with were bodies that actually work right across Oxfordshire, not just in one area. So if you're going to deal with a company that's going across several areas, it seems sensible to have some kind of way of dealing with that. So I wouldn't take that out. Scrutiny panel, that's a difficult one. I think there was a great deal of value of seeing.
You've kind of moved us into discussion. Okay. Have you got any more questions for the
question I have is what goes into the terms of reference? What are we really holding on to? And scrutiny panel, I'm not sure. I think there was value to people from different areas seeing how that area worked differently, because West is very different from the city, etc. And having a panel made up of people who all saw it in their life. If you're just going through each individual scrutiny panel, I would suggest that we got to be carefully out of that discussion. You're going to be burying everybody entrenched in their own local area. And I think the whole point of this is to get out of that and get people to see the whole picture across Oxfordshire. Okay. So those are the things I think we need: terms of reference and the scrutiny panel.
Terms of reference and screening. Okay. Did either of these have any other comments, particularly on the comments Judy's added in about things like flooding or anything like that as well? They've been involved in the discussions or should be?
So are you asking?
Yeah, sorry, either of you or David.
Not specifically about, I think if I were to answer those questions, I'd probably be repeating sort of basically the messages that we're getting. I've been saying terms of reference do have to be very carefully constructed. And yes, I believe that taking away the scrutiny panel from Bob is going to see an improvement in scrutiny rather than a deficit.
Have we got any more specific questions? And then we'll move to David. Sorry, David, carry on.
I think what Judy was saying was there are issues which cross district boundaries, and that we would benefit from looking on a county-wide or on across council. It's just we need to be really precise about what those things are. And what our suggestion was, both Bethia and I, was that it should be the leaders who decide. This is a thing that FOP looks at. I think what we've struggled with in the past is we've received an agenda and it's got something on it, and we thought, where did that come from? And so we spend, when I say we, I mean Suzanne, spends a lot of time doing damage limitation to say, oh, that's what this means. Whereas under the model that we'd like to see, a leader would bring something to the table and say, I think we could benefit from looking at, say, flood alleviation across the whole county, or whatever the subject is. And the other councils would either agree or not agree. And then we might go ahead and do some work together. But what we can't carry on is doing what we're doing at the moment, which is just picking up anything and running with it. Does that help?
And my reading of that would be that those kind of topics are catered for within the proposals for task and finish groups. Yeah, okay.
So
Right, 2 specific questions, Lee and then Peter, and then
my question, Bethany and David, is about it's been said that it's a decision-making forum for that. And my understanding of where we were with that before was it was a coalition of the willing. In my understanding, it's not a qualified majority voting or anything like that, that to make decisions, it has to be consensus. Now, I don't know if that is how it is, but it certainly would be how I would suggest it should be. That it would be very difficult and I think problematic if we were getting to a point where 5 councils potentially agreed and the one who was potentially going to be elected council didn't in fact agree with that particular decision. I think that the cooperation requires that kind of decision-making process, but I'm not sure that I'm perfectly clear on exactly what it is, but we said that it has to be democratic and subject to scrutiny and so forth. So just interested in understanding that.
I think,
if you all agree, it becomes less difficult, doesn't it?
I said previously with your earlier question that it has been very confused and like the difference between board and panel partnerships, whatever. It has always been what it is. It's been a statutory committee, is that correct? Yeah, which takes with it a decision-making power. So it's always been that. I believe earlier, back in 2019, there was a decision taken by South and Vale to sort of make sure that there were limited decisions made at BOP because we always value our sovereign democratic values, and that's where we went with that. It's like lots of voices. So it has always had a decision-making power. But not many, very many decisions have gone through it. Definitely not in my time. There have been things decided, noted. We haven't necessarily, as South and Vale, sort of like, so the Experience Oxfordshire paper that came, we said, oh, that's nice, guys, but we're not interested. There's been that sort of thing. That's not a decision. That's just noting we don't really want to get involved with that, so you go ahead. But again, I think it all comes down to the terms of reference and what we define as a decision going forward.
Suzanne's just offered to explain the decision.
Yeah, I thought maybe I've just opened the current terms of reference, so it explains. So basically the majority of votes is required, and in the event of there being an equal number of votes for or against a particular proposition, a casting vote by the chair may be exercised. But as Becca says, it's been quite a few occasions when it's been in that position because of the issues that have been brought to that kind.
And I mean, it's not just that one POP meeting that happens. I don't even know how many times, like once every 2 months or whatever. There's a lot that goes on behind the scene to get to a point that probably, I mean, we say, no way, we're not having that. And then Susan wants to go off, yeah. So, yeah.
But that's a problem.
Okay, so, right, okay, we can come back to that in our discussion in a minute. Have a question?
That was a question on the basis of that.
Yeah.
Therefore, leaders, do you agree that there should be majority decision making in the terms of reference going forward?
It's quite a big.
Or in the event of equal votes, the chair's casting vote to make a decision.
Well, coming up, it will be both of ours. So, but
Together you're 2, and there are another 3, aren't there? So.
As chair.
Actually, can I ask, point of clarification, is county have a vote or not?
Yeah, and the chair rotates and things with his hands up.
as has been said, it always has had the ability to make a vote. I don't think we can avoid putting that in the terms of reference, but we've never actually had a vote. So what we normally do is head it off at the pass if we think that there is likely to be a contentious vote, and aim for consensus. But as I said, it's always been in the terms of reference of FOP, and I don't think it's caused us a problem before.
Okay, let's come back to that in the recommendation. I'm going to give the last question to Peter, and then we're going to move to discussing our recommendation.
So one of the things you commented on earlier, that this was intended to be temporary, and the FOP reset was, the view was that it was temporary. And I think if that is the case, that this is temporary because DEVA is going to do something different, then you must focus on the work programme. So the work programme needs to be named so they deliver proper stuff. Yeah, it's a request. Yeah, sorry, recommendation.
Okay, all right. Okay, we've moved to recommendation. So in terms of the questions, and I think feel free to add or change what I'm going to say, but just to start us off thinking about our recommendations and what we'd like to kind of take to leaders as a result of the discussion. I think it's very, very clear that we're concerned to limit the terms of reference, specific items that have been particularly picked up. The local area energy partnership, PASCO, which I can never remember, is zero carbon, Oxfordshire, and devolution are three kind of big things, but also we also have the possibility of task and finished groups, but limiting the scope through the terms of reference. The importance of the strategic vision as a democratic basis of this. So that's about not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, using that as a basis, and as leaders we would like you to really focus on that. More clarity, and it might just be that this has happened but it hasn't come out in the document so far, more clarity on accountability and transparency and scrutiny, how those functions are going to work, and particularly how you're going to deal with the loss of a forum where lots of different councils all got together with the same scrutiny. We're concerned that the thematic priorities are too broad. I think we've got that. Leaders need to be in control of the work programme and to ensure that it delivers real results in the time that we've got left, and to really focus your minds. And then we are concerned, it seems, about the majority voting, and whether or not we want the leaders to really go away and think about that in conjunction with officers, perhaps look about whether it works differently elsewhere. So those would be my summing up of the recommendations, or the kind of thoughts, and so yes, feel free to add in.
Have a recommendation for make sure there's an emergency off switch. I don't want to say for the exit an Oxford emergency thing, but if it does become something that South or Vale decide that they can't live with, they're getting overruled in majority voting and so on, there has to be an exit door that can be easily used.
That was presumably, that's within the terms of reference, isn't it?
Good. I just wanted to check that.
So I remember that. Stefan?
I just love the sentence about the cost. If there's less being done, then less cost.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
On the basis of all of that, I would still suggest that we take out the word board and replace it with the word forum. So that just the impression is just modified slightly and softened in terms of what it's there to do. It's there to come together rather than to just decree things.
Am I seeing nods?
All Fred.
Forum for Resource and Economic Development.
Yeah. Okay.
And yes, Chair, just on point 3 on page 95, which is you mentioned the thematic priorities, and who was it who expressed concern about point 3? It was Ron.
Yes. Very articulately, only
My view would be that the thematic priorities should be to deliver the aims of the Oxfordshire strategic vision.
Okay,
Should be, isn't it? So
very simple, deliver a strategic. Okay, because that's where the thematic priorities are.
Yeah.
Okay, consider wearing a board to forum. Any other discussion on the recommendations?
Yeah, can I just apologise for not picking up on that, because I did mean to answer that, and I think I don't know whether I've seen it in a report or something, but I had always thought that that aspect was going to be enhanced.
Sorry, enhanced.
Yes, or enhanced. Enhanced.
Don't give you yogurt.
Okay, enhanced.
I wonder if there should be something that talks about sort of almost a kind of subsidiarity point, that the FOP should only do things where it adds value and can only add value. You know, that it acting together can do something which the individual parts cannot.
I think that was the impression that I'd always been given, that this is what we were trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And apologies if it hasn't come across.
So I think that comes within limiting the terms of reference to be really specific about where this forum adds value. Okay. Any other comments or recommendations? Is there anything in the list that I said that you think that I've got wrong or misjudged the conversation? So on the basis then, so just to go through it again, so we need to limit the terms of reference to where this board/forum adds value, including items we do consider important: LAEP, passcode devolution, and the task and finish groups. The importance of the strategic vision as a democratic basis, and that the thematic priorities of the new FOP iteration should be to deliver the strategic vision. Leaders need to be in control of the work programme and have the power, the ability to set the programme. And for the leaders, we're asking for the leaders really to think about the majority voting. Make sure that there is an exit in the interest of our councils, should it be needed. Consider cost in relation to reduced scope, and to consider the title of the board and whether the word board is the most appropriate word.
Duplication in there as well, avoidance of duplication.
That's easy reference, but it's a good point.
Yeah. So that's the terms of reference, to add value and avoid duplication. Yeah, okay. I can always follow this.
It says it in the paper.
Okay, are we happy to, do you like to propose? Or can I propose?
You propose what you put down.
I propose that is a fair recommendation of our recommendations, or a fair summary of our recommendations to our leaders.
It is happy.
Happy to
He's nodding away.
Thank you, Lee. I've got thumbs up from our head of legal.
Should we add to our esteemed leaders? We get dragged in front of us regularly.
Haul you in again, David. So are leaders happy? Are there any clarifications you wish to make?
No, I think that's a good summary.
With the first. Thank you both. Oh yeah, so is everybody happy with that? I've had a seconder from the content, hands up. Okay.
I think we have consensus, right?
We have
Majority. That's important to us.
We've only once not had consensus. We did it very nicely, but we did do it very nicely. Yeah. Okay, so thank you, David and Bethany, for your time on that item. I will finish that item. We will move next to item 9, which is to consider whether or not we need to exclude members of the press and public from the meeting for the following item of business: land acquisition under section 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as amended on the grounds that it is likely that there will be disclosure of exempt information
as defined in paragraph 3 of Schedule 12A, and that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing information. Voted, seconded, thirded. Yeah, okay. Okay, so we will exclude the public now then, but I propose we have a 5-minute break.
Sorry, we have quite a minute. If I could just ask Susie to close the stream down.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Susie.